And we're back. Today is Thursday, the 15th of June, 2023. Today, on the fuel tanks, what I'm going to do is continue working on the rear baffle and creating the mounting point for this sender right here. This is the access plate that goes on the inboard root rib for the traditional mounting position. I think I mentioned already that I'm replacing this one with a completely blank one to go in that spot in the left tank where we're going to have the inverted fuel system, which means that this little portion right here that that usually mounts the fuel sender, I'm going to cut it out and use it for a mounting plate on the baffle back here. So that's what I want to get done today on the fuel tanks, and then once that's complete, I think I'll move on to the tool work that I was doing yesterday. Maybe one more modification to that rod end bearing tool, and then just taking a piece of I think 3/16 inch rod and cutting it into sections and creating aligning tools. So I'll tell you about that when it happens. That's it for the intro. Let's build an airplane.
So I can kind of choose how I mount this thing to the baffle, and I don't necessarily need to use a reinforcement plate. I could just match drill the baffle to the hold pattern on the sender and put some nut plates on there and do it that way. But the baffle is not that thick for mounting the nut plates, and might as well make it as sturdy as it was originally planned to be using that plate. So I spent a little bit of time here getting it all sort of mapped out on that, basically that extra reinforcement plate that's not going to be used for anything now. So I'm going to cut that thing out, and basically I just drew a whole bunch of tangent lines all the way around that circle that I traced around the sender base plate, and then took it over to make a bunch of tiny cuts and see if I could turn this thing into a round piece. I could have cut it square or octagonal or anything I wanted to, but I figured I would try to make a little ring that basically matched the outside diameter of the plate that was going to be mounted to it. And then I had to decide if I was going to mount the whole thing on the outside or sandwich the baffle. And that's what I decided to do, was that I would put the ring on the inside of the baffle, just to get a little bit better sealing. So here's what happened. I left the blue vinyl on there when I drew the circle on it, made all the cuts, and then when I started on the sanding disc trying to chase it down to the line, the blue vinyl was coming up, and so I was losing my line. So I came back and put it back on that sender, cleat-coated on there, drew the circle again on the bare aluminum, and we're back in business. So I've got an 80 grit disc on that disc sander. I don't use it that often, but for stuff like this, it's great, where you've got a thick piece of aluminum and you need to take off a significant amount of material. That worked really well. And then back over to the Scotch-Brite wheel to just clean it up. And I got to tell you, I was really happy with how well this thing turned out. I mean, it's pretty dang round, considering that it was all basically done by hand. Again, not like it even matters, but it sure turned out pretty good. And then what we're doing here is double checking the clocking, the orientation of that thing, because I need to now match drill the baffle so that the screws can go through the sender base plate, through the baffle, and then into the nut plates that will be on the reinforcing ring that's on the inside of the baffle. And I really took my time before I was willing to drill a hole in that baffle. I just stared at it, and you could probably tell that I'm on the phone too. And so finally, my friend that I was talking to, I said, I just need a moment of silence here so that I can make sure that I'm not going to make a mistake when I start making these making these holes. And the holes that I'm drilling are the holes for the screws. So it's a number 19, I think. Number 19 hole. And by the way, it worked out. Everything is clocked correctly. The holes are in the right places. They're all nice and clean. So, get into that, get it all drilled and happy with it. Just using Cleco clamps to hold it in place while I do that match drilling. And then, of course, you know me, throwing a piece of wood underneath it so that can get a clean hole, and I'm not distorting the metal as I'm pressing down on it with the drill bit. Once this is done, meaning like once these fuel tanks are done, things are going to go pretty quickly in terms of getting those wings off of those stands. Once this is done, then rivet the leading edges, put those together, rivet them to the spar, and then rivet the top skins, and then those things come off the stands, and then I will have so much room for activities once that stuff is all out of the way. I'm looking forward to that. The wing stands have been great, but I'm also just looking forward to getting all of that space back. The wings themselves will end up going in a cradle, basically, the one long piece that's on casters that can move around. It'll be leading edge pointed downward for each wing, and the bottoms of the wings will be facing outboard so that I can work on things like wiring and plumbing the wings and rigging the aileron bell crank and all that stuff, which, speaking of, I just found out today that almost all of my back-ordered parts for my wings are on their way. The only thing I'm missing, funnily enough, is rod end bearings. I think that Vance had like 5,000 of these rod end bearings on back order, and they just received a shipment of 2,000 of them. So I was definitely high on the list for my empennage kit, but my wing kit, which was ordered many months later, is further down the list. But anyways, that's good news. Got it all drilled and very happy with how that turned out. And time to rivet nut plates on there. And that went really well, thankfully. If you recall, it's been, maybe a week ago or more when I was doing the ring on the access plate. There was one rivet that, one nut plate that I riveted on one, it's like a little figure eight. I put one rivet in, and then the second rivet, it wasn't even going through the nut plate. It was just hanging out in space. So, silly mistake, easy to fix, but no mistakes on this today. Okay, here's what I'm doing. I am with acetone over there trying to clean off all of my dies for my riveting dies for my squeezer. They got really sloppy when I was doing that last bit of the reinforcement plates on the outboard ribs, and instead of cleaning them off when they were still kind of wet and sloppy, I let them sit. And they're clean now, they're fine, but it is a pain in the butt. I should have just cleaned them in the beginning, but it is, as I've mentioned many times, hot as sin. And I'll show you right here, which would kind of explain why as soon as I was done working on that stuff, I just wanted to wash my hands and get back inside the house. But anyways, it's done. The riveting is done. I got a couple of Amazon packages there. I told you that I've been waiting on some tools and some parts. The tools that arrived today were safety wire pliers and a spool of safety wire. That's something that I didn't have, and I made sure that I got a good set of safety wire pliers. Obviously, that's going to come into play throughout the build. It hasn't yet.
And today, we fabricated a mount so that we can put the fuel sender on the rear spar for the inverted fuel modification. Turned out pretty good.
So as I was saying about the safety wire pliers, the flop tube, you have to use some safety wire when you mount that because it doesn't have an anti-rotation bracket like the normal mounting place for the regular fuel pickup. So I've got my 3/16 piece of steel there that I'm going to make these aligning tools with, and I'm basically cutting a bunch of 6-inch lengths. And I did, of the 4, I think I did the first 2 with the Dremel tool, and then I realized maybe this is not the right tool for the job. It gets it done, but guess what? A hacksaw gets this done really fast and very easily. The Dremel, yeah, the cutoff wheel is great, except you can't get a straight cut on it because you're a fat hand and the thing is in the way. So then I'm basically just cleaning up the ends and making them nice, clean, rounded pins. One end is just, so it doesn't scratch you or whatever. And then the other one, I'm putting more of a point on it because these aligning tools, they're probably going to be approaching the components that they're trying to connect up from funny angles. So I put sort of a dull point on, like the first quarter, 3/8 of an inch of all of these things. And then that will be, in a minute here, we'll get into the bending of those. And I'm just kind of guesstimating on the dimensions of these things from looking at the pictures of what some other folks have done. And they're just like kind of make those and then bend them a little bit more than 90 degrees. And so I've marked 1 inch on there, and then you'll see me kind of fooling around a little bit, trying to figure out how I can secure that extra piece of steel there to try to bend a nice radius on it. And I realized it ain't gonna happen. Just bend it. So all I did was I let it sit a little bit above that 1 inch mark and bent it, and it came out great. And then afterwards, I actually talked to somebody in the Slack group who said that these might actually be a little bit long, which is a good problem to have. It's the bad problem is for them to be too short. I can't do anything about that. So these turned out great. I'm happy to have them. It's just a little bit of homework that needed to be attended to. So now I have new tools. I'm thinking about maybe doing a tools video, basically the airplane tools that I use most often, and then maybe a special feature on just the tools that I've had to make. But a little outro here, and then that'll do it for episode 71.
Yesterday I made this simple rod end bearing tool. You see right there. And then today I made some aligners, so when it comes time to hang the elevators and rudder on their adjoining parts, we've got tools that we can use to make it happen.